A fierce game is unfolding along the line of actual control, LAC. Imagine standing on a snowy Himalayan peak, feeling the tension that's building with each passing day. China is building roads, rails, and villages, inching closer to Indian borders. But here's the burning question. Is India ready for what's coming? Will it be able to stand tall against China's bold moves? What's really at stake along the LAC? Let's dig deep into this high-stakes standoff where infrastructure meets ambition and resilience clashes with strategy. Let's start with some background. The line of actual control, or LAC, stretches over 3,488 kilometers, cutting across rugged terrain that's as harsh as it is beautiful. This border is not just a line on a map. It's a symbol of a long-standing tension between two of the world's most powerful nations, India and China. For years, the LAC has seen occasional skirmishes, moments where soldiers from both sides come face to face. But now China's moves along this line are different, they're bolder, more calculated. What's changed? China isn't just sending troops, it's laying down roads, extending railways, and setting up high-tech surveillance systems. It's a power play, plain and simple. The stakes are high, and both nations know it. The question is, can India keep up with this relentless pace of development? China's infrastructure game is impressive, no doubt about it. Let's break down what they've been building. First, there are the roads and rail networks. Roads like the G219 and G318 names that might not mean much to most people are crucial for China's military logistics. They're not just roads, they're lifelines that can move thousands of troops and supplies quickly and efficiently. The Sichuan-Tibet Railway, another megaproject, cuts down travel time across Tibet, allowing China's forces to reach the LAC faster than ever before. Why does this matter? Because roads and railways aren't just about connecting cities, they're about strategic access. Every new mile of road or railway built by China along the LAC is another step closer to strategic dominance. Imagine having the ability to move troops and supplies at lightning speed. That's the advantage China is giving itself along the LAC. If you think China is stopping with roads and railways, think again. There's another layer to this strategy, the Xiaokang Villages Initiative. These aren't just any villages. They're built right along the border, some close enough to see Indian soil. Officially, they're for civilians, places meant to bring economic growth to the area. But look a little closer and you'll see their dual purpose. These villages act as eyes and ears for the Chinese government, with residents ready to report anything unusual happening on the other side of the border. And it's not just about surveillance. The existence of these villages sends a message. China is here, and it's here to stay. By establishing permanent settlements, China is strengthening its claim over disputed territories. For India, these villages are a serious concern. How does one counter villages filled with civilians, all the while knowing they could serve military interests at a moment's notice? Beyond roads and villages, there's water, more specifically, the mighty Brahmaputra River. Flowing from Tibet into India, this river is a vital source of water for millions in northeastern India. China has been building hydropower projects on the Yarlung-Changpo, the Tibetan name for the Brahmaputra. And these aren't small projects. They're massive dams capable of generating enormous amounts of electricity. But here's where things get tricky. These dams also give China control over the water flow into India. Think about the implications. A country upstream that controls the water can, in theory, disrupt the lives of millions downstream. China insists that these projects are purely for electricity generation, but India can't ignore the strategic threat. Could these dams be used as leverage in future disputes? And if so, what does that mean for India's water security? China's reach doesn't end with physical infrastructure. There's also technology, specifically 5G networks deployed in border areas. Why would a rural village need high-speed internet? The answer is twofold: civilian convenience and military surveillance. With 5G in place, China's government can monitor border activities in real time, track troop movements, and enhance its communication network's resilience. This technology gives China an edge that goes beyond conventional warfare. In the event of a conflict, information moves at the speed of light. With 5G, Chinese forces can react quickly, share intelligence, and make rapid adjustments. It's a strategic asset that gives China yet another advantage along the LAC. The question for India is, how can it counter such an advanced surveillance setup? The infrastructure is just one piece of the puzzle. China's military is also undergoing a massive modernization. It's not just about having more soldiers. It's about having better equipped, better trained, and faster reacting troops. Along the line of actual control, China has deployed advanced weaponry, including stealth fighters and missile systems capable of hitting targets deep within Indian territory. But what's more interesting is China's military doctrine, specifically its border area counterattack campaign. In simple terms, this doctrine means China doesn't wait to be attacked. It's ready to strike first if it feels threatened. And it doesn't stop with conventional warfare. China's rocket force, its missile branch, is trained to disable enemy infrastructure even before a single soldier sets foot in enemy territory. This approach poses a unique challenge for India. Can India's military adapt to this aggressive doctrine? Let's pause and take stock. When it comes to infrastructure, China is far ahead. The roads, railways, airfields, and villages along the LAC give China a clear advantage in terms of mobility and logistics. India, on the other hand, has some catching up to do. While there have been recent improvements, the difference is still stark. In some regions, Indian troops rely on single-lane roads that become impassable in bad weather. Compare that to China's multi-lane highways and expressways, and you start to see the logistical gap. For India, the challenge isn't just to match China's infrastructure. It's to build infrastructure that can withstand the harsh Himalayan climate. The question remains, can India bridge this gap before it's too late? India is not sitting idle. Over the past few years, the Border Roads Organization, BRO, has been working tirelessly to improve connectivity in border regions. Projects like the Darbuk-Shak Daulat Beg Oldi, DSDBO Road, and the Atal Tunnel are significant milestones. These routes not only bring supplies closer to the LAC, but also reduce travel time for troops. Railway projects are also underway, with new lines planned to connect remote areas in the northeast. These efforts signal a shift in India's approach. For the longest time, infrastructure development along the LAC was slow, partly due to environmental concerns. Now India is racing against time to fortify its borders. But will these efforts be enough to counter China's established presence? It's not just about roads and railways. India has also ramped up its military presence along the LAC. Additional troops, new equipment, and advanced weaponry have been deployed to balance the scales. India's army has been conducting joint exercises to test readiness, drilling its soldiers to respond quickly if tensions boil over. But here's the twist. Unlike China, India has to manage multiple fronts. With long-standing tensions on its western border as well, India's resources are stretched. The challenge is maintaining a strong defense along the LAC while keeping other fronts secure. How long can India sustain this balancing act? Logistics is a battle in itself, especially in the high-altitude regions of the Himalayas. Supplying troops along the LAC isn't easy. Roads can be blocked by landslides, and temperatures can drop so low that even basic equipment malfunctions. While China has developed all-weather roads, India's infrastructure is often at the mercy of the seasons. The monsoon and winter months bring particular challenges. Supply lines get cut, and moving troops becomes nearly impossible in certain areas. India has made progress in recent years, but there's still a long way to go. In a high-stakes situation, can India ensure a steady flow of supplies to its troops in these remote regions? Imagine the ability to move an army overnight, at the first hint of trouble. That's the kind of mobilization power China has along the LAC. Thanks to their extensive road networks, China can mobilize troops, tanks, and supplies swiftly. The Sichuan-Tibet Railway alone reduces travel time significantly, letting China move military assets at a pace that's hard to match. Every new rail connection, every road added to China's infrastructure, is like adding fuel to a finely tuned engine, ready to roar into action at any sign of escalation. But what does this mean for India? China's road network isn't just about connecting cities, it's about connecting power to the front lines. These roads and railways give China the flexibility to change strategies on the fly. For instance, they could shift troops stationed in one area to another within hours, making it harder for India to anticipate their next move. In the unforgiving heights of the Himalayas, where movement is usually slow and exhausting, this capability is a game changer. China has created a military ecosystem where supplies, reinforcements, and heavy artillery can flow like water down a mountain stream. The big question for India, though, is whether it can keep up. If China decides to test this logistical muscle, can India respond with the same speed and precision? In today's world, borders aren't just on land, they're online too. While China's building roads and railways, they're also fortifying their presence in cyberspace. Over the last decade, cyber attacks on India have surged, with many traced back to China. These aren't random, nor are they minor. Each cyber attack can be a preemptive strike, gathering intelligence, disrupting communications, or simply creating chaos. China's focus on cybersecurity gives it a major edge. Along the LAC, they've set up high-tech surveillance systems using satellites, drones, and data-gathering tools to keep an eye on everything. Imagine the ability to track troop movements, intercept signals, or even disable critical systems, all from a safe distance. And with 5G rolled out in remote border villages, this real-time monitoring and response capability is now a reality. For India, these attacks are both a warning and a challenge. Every time a network is breached, it reveals a potential vulnerability. India's cybersecurity infrastructure is growing stronger, but the gap is still significant. While India's defense forces are developing stronger firewalls and advanced encryption, the digital battleground remains a front where China has the advantage. If the digital warfare escalates, will India's defenses hold up? Or could a cyber attack disable India's systems before a single shot is even fired? Wars and conflicts aren't just fought on land, they impact economies too. The tension along the LAC has a ripple effect, reaching boardrooms, markets, and trade deals. As the situation intensifies, India has had to increase its defense spending, diverting more resources toward building infrastructure and buying military equipment. Defense spending has shot up, but so has the cost of fortifying borders and preparing for worst-case scenarios. On the trade front, the relationship between India and China is strained. There's been a push in India to reduce dependency on Chinese imports, particularly in sensitive sectors like technology and pharmaceuticals. India has banned certain Chinese apps, restricted investments, and encouraged local businesses to replace Chinese products with alternatives. This self-reliance movement is aimed at making India stronger economically, but it's not without its challenges. China remains one of India's largest trading partners, and breaking this economic link could create shockwaves. What's the cost of standing up to a powerful neighbor? Can India afford to cut off economic ties with China without damaging its own economy? These are difficult questions with no easy answers. The economic dimension of the LAC standoff is like a chess game, where every move has far-reaching consequences, not just for India and China, but for the global economy as well. It's a delicate balance, and one wrong step could tip the scales. The Himalayas are one of the world's most stunning and fragile ecosystems, yet the LAC standoff is taking a toll on this landscape. China's aggressive infrastructure projects involve cutting through dense forests, flattening mountain paths, and damming rivers. This isn't just about concrete and steel, it's about changing the landscape, perhaps permanently. Roads, railways, and dams disrupt local wildlife, uproot vegetation, and make the terrain more vulnerable to landslides. One of the biggest environmental concerns is the Brahmaputra River. China has built a series of dams on this river, controlling the flow of water that eventually reaches northeastern India. India relies on this water for agriculture, drinking, and hydropower. By controlling the Brahmaputra, China could potentially turn off a vital resource, creating a strategic weapon out of a river. For India, the challenge is twofold. First, it has to counterbalance China's infrastructure without causing similar damage to its side of the border. Second, India must prepare for potential water scarcity in case China ever decides to restrict the Brahmaputra's flow. This ecological chess game is about much more than territory. It's about preserving the natural resources that sustain life in the region. The question is, can development and nature coexist along the LAC, or is this fragile environment paying the price for a geopolitical rivalry? Infrastructure and military power are only part of the equation. Diplomacy is another critical piece, and India knows this well. As tensions with China have escalated, India has looked outward, building alliances and strengthening its presence on the global stage. The Quad, an alliance with the United States, Japan, and Australia, has become a key part of India's strategy. Together, these nations form a counterbalance to China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific region. But alliances are complicated. The Quad isn't a formal military alliance. It's more of a partnership based on shared interests. Each country has its own reasons for joining, and not all are directly tied to the LAC. Still, the Quad sends a clear message. India isn't facing this standoff alone. It has friends, and together they have significant military and economic clout. India has also engaged in bilateral talks with China, trying to find common ground. The diplomatic path is challenging. China isn't known for backing down easily. But through dialogue, India hopes to avoid full-scale conflict while still standing its ground. This balancing act requires finesse. On one hand, India must show it won't be pushed around. On the other, it needs to keep communication open. Will these alliances and diplomatic efforts be enough to keep China in check? The Quad brings powerful friends to India's side, but how committed are they to India's specific concerns at the LAC? And in the high-stakes world of diplomacy, how far will India's allies go if things escalate? The answers to these questions could shape the future of the region and determine whether the LAC sees peace or conflict in the coming years. The battle along the LAC isn't just happening on the ground or in diplomatic meetings. It's playing out on screens and newspapers in both India and China. Media outlets on each side frame the story in ways that shape public opinion, and the impact is powerful. In India, the media often highlights the bravery of its soldiers and the resilience of the country's defenses. There's a sense of pride and defiance, a belief that India won't back down no matter the odds. On the Chinese side, state-controlled media paints a different picture. In their narrative, China is simply protecting its borders, and any action it takes is defensive. Chinese media rarely portrays India as an equal rival. Instead, they emphasize the strength of the People's Liberation Army and the government's determination to maintain stability. This controlled message keeps public sentiment in line with the government's stance. But here's the twist. Public opinion isn't just a passive reflection of government policies, it can also push those policies forward. The louder the media drums beat, the more pressure there is on leaders to act decisively. If the public believes the border must be defended at all costs, that sentiment can make peaceful solutions harder to achieve. It's like adding fuel to a fire that both sides are trying to keep under control. So the question becomes, is the media helping or hurting efforts to find a peaceful solution? Or are both governments simply riding a wave of national pride that's becoming harder to steer? As China steps up its cyber warfare capabilities, India is also strengthening its digital defenses. Cybersecurity has become a critical part of national security, and India's government is fully aware of the risks. Specialized units have been set up to counter cyber threats, with experts working around the clock to protect critical infrastructure from potential attacks. But cyber defense is not just about blocking attacks, it's about anticipating them. India's digital infrastructure is growing fast, and that comes with its own set of vulnerabilities. For example, power grids, transportation networks, and even defense systems are increasingly dependent on digital networks. A single cyber attack could disrupt services for millions, affecting everything from banking to basic utilities. India is working to build a digital fortress, but staying ahead in the cyber game is tough. China's cyber capabilities are among the most advanced in the world, with years of development and vast resources. There's also the challenge of securing information. In the digital age, knowledge is power, and cyber espionage can give one country a massive advantage. For India, this means constantly adapting to new threats, upgrading technology, and training cyber experts. But the question remains, in a conflict where digital and physical borders overlap, can India's cyber defenses stand strong against one of the world's most formidable cyber forces? India's response to the LAC challenge is not just about immediate action, it's about long-term resilience. To ensure round-the-year connectivity, the government is investing in all-weather roads and tunnels. These infrastructure upgrades are essential for maintaining supplies and troop movement, regardless of the season. But building infrastructure takes time, especially in challenging terrains. India has also started war games and preparedness exercises to test its responses to various scenarios. These drills help pinpoint weaknesses and improve readiness. However, in a high-stakes game like this, will India's long-term strategies be enough to withstand China's relentless infrastructure push? Let's consider what could happen if tensions reach a tipping point. China has the advantage of high-speed mobilization, backed by a vast network of infrastructure. They could quickly bring troops to the LAC, with strategic flexibility to shift their forces as needed. China's tactics might involve precision strikes on key Indian positions, aiming to overwhelm before a full response can be mounted. India, however, is prepared to defend its territory with a strong, well-trained army. Recent border skirmishes have shown that Indian forces are resilient and ready. But what would happen in a full-scale conflict? Could India's strategic countermeasures stand up to China's firepower and speed? This standoff along the LAC is a story of strategy, ambition, and resilience. China's infrastructure development is a clear power play, and India is racing to keep pace. The outcome of this standoff isn't just about who holds the high ground, it's about who is prepared for the long haul, who can adapt and respond when the stakes are highest. The world is watching. Will India's alliances and strategic responses hold back China's advances? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, this is a test of resolve on both sides. So what's your take on this high-stakes rivalry? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you're always updated on the latest in global affairs.